In Belgium in 1989 and 90, it was a very different story. Here there was a UFO phenomenon that engaged the whole country to the highest level. Literally hundreds of separate sightings of a strange triangle of lights that moved slowly across the countryside were reported to the authorities. And this unidentified flying object was investigated by a number of experts.
At first sight, it is very strange. Because, for example, the technical characteristics of such flying objects are very different from what we know.
Professor Leon Brennig teaches at the Free University of Brussels and was one of those who looked closely at the phenomenon.
I saw a lot of first-hand witnesses, had direct access to at least 800 investigations which were carefully made. All these investigations indicate that there is really a phenomenon which is unusual. All the flying characteristics are highly strange. We have a lot of observations of such triangular platform which was hovering silently without any apparent action on the air above a farm during 20 minutes. Why above a farm? What does it mean?
One of the many witnesses at the time was Colonel André Armand, a civil engineering officer in the Belgian Army. In December 1989, he was driving along this road at night when he saw 3 rectangular panels of light moving slowly across the sky.
I saw the yellow panels beyond the trees there, flying till the trees there. And the yellow panels change into a white light, and this white light was coming down to me. At this moment, my wife told to me, André, come, we must go now. Because when you see such big light coming to you, that's very strange to see that. And my wife said to me, André, we are going away now. This light disappears, and I saw only 3 yellow, white, smaller lights, triangular. The center, the red light, pulsing, always pulsing. And this object was flying away very, very fast in this direction.
In the following months, there were many similar sightings of a strange triangle of lights, not only in the countryside, but also hovering over the rooftops in the center of Brussels. Marcel Alfarano, a shopkeeper, managed to capture it on his camcorder.
It happened at about 2:20 in the morning on the night of the 31st of March. I took my camera and I went upstairs. It was at that moment that I saw in the distance 2 lights. They were bigger than car headlights, and they were slowly coming towards me. They were moving very slowly, high above the rooftops there. And as they got closer, I could see there was a 3rd light behind the other 2. They stopped over there. I realized it was not a plane. It was something bizarre, something unrecognizable. Later, some people from the government phoned me, and they say I should not get too carried away. They said I should say it was a plane I had filmed.
The Belgian Air Force decided that whatever the UFO was, it could not be ignored.
In 89, 90, we had a lot of observation from the ground, a lot of people seeing strange things in the air. and the Belgian Air Force already scrambled 2 times F-16 to observe what the people saw from the ground.
Wilfred de Brouwer, a colonel at the time, was officer in charge of operations.
Some people saw very strange objects in the air with a very peculiar behavior. They called the police. The police confirmed the observation. They called the radar station of Glon, and Glon confirmed that they saw a blip in the area. And that was also confirmed by another radar station, which is about 100 miles away. Based on that, they asked to send these 2 aircraft in the air.
So that night we had a scramble with 2 F-16. I was one of the 2 pilots, so I was leading the pair for that mission. We had a lot of information coming from the ground, and those people could basically inform us about the exact position of I would say, the UFO.
Ground radar observed a blip which was moving very fast from an area south of Brussels towards the east. The aircraft were in the near vicinity and, of course, tried to detect that particular object. And the 2 aircraft confirmed that they had a lock-on which showed the speed of 700 knots, around 700 knots.
The F-16s had repeated locks onto the UFO, but as they closed in, it changed direction and speed with extraordinary maneuverability. The pilots had no doubt that the target was real.
We had a different radar contact on the target, so it happens at least 3-4 times, where we could acquire a radar lock-on with the F-16, and we knew that at least 1 or 2 times we had exactly the same contact as the one which was on the screen on the ground. It was accelerating very fast, so it was going from 50 knots to more than 1,000 knots. It was really climbing and descending very fast, and it was changing, heading abruptly. And most of the time it was even flying supersonic.
The Air Force never did make direct visual contact with the UFO. Exactly what the target was remained a mystery.
I don't think it could have been experimental aircraft. First of all, we always look to the United States. They could have been doing experiments here. I don't see why they should be doing it in Belgium in the first place. Secondly, they confirmed officially that it was not them. We had an official declaration of the ambassador here. And thirdly, the performance of this system was such that it could not be related even to an experimental technology.
It was not a prototype, and I don't really believe it was a meteorological phenomena at that moment.
There's not much left, and one could refer to an extraterrestrial observation or vehicle, if you want. And I think that's an option which, or an assumption which should not be excluded. I'm not saying that it was an extraterrestrial, but it is an assumption that should not be excluded.
Perhaps the most convincing evidence for UFOs can be found in Brussels, of all places. For a period of about 2 years, the whole country was affected by a wave of sightings. They'd been seen by witnesses, the police, and by local radar stations. The Belgian Army was forced to take the claims seriously. They allowed their F-16 fighter aircraft to be involved in trying to intercept these UFOs. They had the full backing of the chief of the Belgian Air Staff, Colonel de Brouwer.
Initially, we thought that some of these observations were caused by atmospheric interference, such as weather conditions or electromagnetic interference. But later on, we found out that at certain moments, indeed, we could relate one visual observation with one observation on the radar. And of course, then we said, well, to have a confirmation, it may be very useful to have an additional observation from an aircraft.
The aircraft were deployed as part of a routine training program. Most times nothing was seen, except on one particular night.
The night of 30 and 31st March, we had an observation on the radar, and in addition, a visual observation on the ground confirmed by the police. We decided to send 2 airplanes in the air around midnight.
This video of the F-16's radar track of the object showed the performance of a vehicle of a totally unknown origin. The Air Force were at a complete loss to explain their findings. A press conference was called.
What these pilots detected was well outside the normal flying envelope of an airplane. Sometimes they had what we call lock-ons, which gave a parameters varying from speeds between 150 knots till 990 knots. An acceleration which occurred in a few seconds.
The Americans denied it was a secret spy plane, so could it have been the first official contact with an alien craft?
These speeds would be impossible to tolerate for a human being. That's a first point. A second point is the visual observations always describe a system, a machine, which hangs and hovers above the surface at quite a low altitude without making any noise. Now, with the current technology, that will be impossible.
So far, the Belgian authorities have refused to announce any official conclusion to subsequent investigations. Could it be the Aurora? Is it likely a UFO could have come from a faraway galaxy? After all, it took us 3 days just to get to the moon.